You're listening to Ideal Practice, episode number 42. Today, we're talking with Amanda Landry. Do you know her? Amanda is the voice and the visionary behind a massive Facebook group for private practice owners. It's called My Private Practice Collective. And at the time of this recording, she is just short of almost 19,000 members in that group. You may know her from that. You may know her because she is a consultant who has courses and coaching for practice owners who have a group practice and are ready to scale. What you might not know about her is that her very successful group practice in South Florida was already kind of busting at the seams. And during the pandemic, it absolutely exploded. Essentially, her practice doubled practically overnight during the pandemic. And she had to manage that insane amount of growth, all while dealing with a pregnancy and preparing to take 4 months off for maternity leave. This is nuts and impressive because Amanda knows herself. She's quite clear about who she is. She is ambitious. She is a driver. She has had big dreams from the beginning. And in a lot of ways, she's been preparing for this moment from the very start when it was just her and one part-time assistant. This is a fascinating story. And that's what we're talking about today. So, stay tuned. Hi, I'm Wendy Pitts-Reeves, and with over 2 decades of experience in the private practice world, I've built my 6-figure business while learning a lot of lessons the hard way. This is the first podcast that shows you how to apply the principles of energy, alignment, and strategy to build a practice that is profit-centered, but people-forward. This is the Ideal Practice Podcast. Hey guys, and welcome back to the podcast. This is Wendy, and I am so glad you're here, and I hope you are ready to learn. Some of you have a solo practice, and you are quite happy right where you are. Thank you very much, doing exactly what you want to do. Some of you have 1, 2, perhaps 3 other providers who work with you. You've got a small group, and you're kind of interested in maybe growing that a little bit. And some of you may very well have really big dreams and want to make a big impact in your community. Well, you are in luck because the conversation we're going to have today, I think, is a little unusual. I am about to introduce you to Amanda Landry. As of the time of this interview, she had 4 locations, roughly 35 clinicians, and was billing for something like 2,000 sessions per month. That's pretty incredible. But the really cool thing is that she's doing that without losing contact with those staff, without losing a sense of the humanity that makes a healing practice work, and without lowering her standards about the kind of clinical care that that group delivers. And you're in for a treat because Amanda was willing to sit down with me and talk details. I'm so grateful for the time that she took in this interview because we did a deep dive, y'all. You're going to learn a lot of the specifics about what it takes to grow a practice like this, how you can structure a practice like this, what some of the challenges are, and so much more. There are also, as there always are, some really juicy details and life lessons that you can take away no matter what kind of practice you have or where you are in your own entrepreneurial journey. So let's get into the interview. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Wendy Pitts-Reeves. You all know that. I am so glad you're here. It is my highest honor today. I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to have today, for real. I've been thinking about this for weeks. Today, you get to meet Amanda Landry. Amanda is a licensed mental health counselor in South Florida who is the founder of the My Practice Collective, which is a giant Facebook group, which is how I found her. I was a part of her Facebook group before I reached out to her. And I want to tell you all, She has so much to share with you in terms of what's possible for you as a healing arts professional. So many ways we can go with this. So let me just start by saying hello, Amanda, and welcome to the program.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm equally as excited.
That's great. It's not a small thing for people to clear out their schedule to make room for this. And with all you got going on, I know that actually is kind of a big deal. So I am grateful for that also. So to get us started, why don't you just tell folks a little bit about, who you are and where you are and all the things that you've got going on?
So I am Amanda Landry. Some of you may know me as Amanda Patterson. We were chatting about that before. And I am a licensed mental health counselor here in South Florida. I am the owner of Caring Therapists. We are a group practice with 4 locations that mainly focuses on evidence-based treatments with a great team of clinicians. We have about 35 clinicians. And then I am the founder of my private practice collective with a little over 18,000 members. And even when I say that, it's like so impactful and so meaningful because that certainly was never set out to be that big. It was kind of like right place, right time where Facebook groups really took off. And I was lucky enough to be in that surge and connected with amazing people. So if anybody's not already a member, we would love to have you. We're there every day on Facebook. And I'm also a consultant through my private practice collective, providing consulting really to, at this time, group practice owners who are looking to start or scale their group practice.
Okay, so you've got your clinical practice, a group practice that you run, and then you've got the Facebook group, and now you're beginning to do what I think of as business coaching. You're beginning to teach people how to do what you're doing. In terms of the group practice work, right? So do you do clinical work anymore yourself at this point?
So no, that's a part of my story is that a bunch of things happened all at once.
Yeah.
And so like the pandemic hit, right? And I was trying to have a baby and I got pregnant and had a baby. I have a pandemic baby.
Congratulations.
Thank you. He is 17 months tomorrow. So part of my role is mommy. And I was, when I was pregnant, I was working virtually, like everybody for the most part was. And when my 4-month maternity leave was coming up, I could just sense I'm a therapist at heart. So I could sense I was not ready to go back to the clinical work. And at the same time, the group practice exploded. A year earlier, I had implemented a leadership team, which was the best time to do that because when we exploded, when the calls started coming in, when we needed to expand, everybody was already in place. It wasn't like I was scrambling to put people in place. This was like a preemptive strike almost to what we didn't even know was going to happen. And so while I wasn't ready to go back to clinical work, my group practice needed me, right? To really be the owner, to drive the mission, to drive the vision, to drive what was happening in the mental health field.
To lead.
To lead. And so I decided not to go back to seeing clients, which I'm not doing now, and probably won't in the near future because of where the practice is.
Yeah. So let's talk about that timeline. So give us a little bit of the backstory about how the heck you got into this. Like where did you start? Did you always plan to do a group practice? Tell us a little bit about that story, how this evolved.
Great question. Yeah. And I'll start in grad school in 2005. They never taught us about private practice. So I was like, I'm going to go work at an agency. That was my plan. I'm going to work at an agency. When I worked in an agency, I moved up to clinical director and then just realized that it was not good for me. It was not congruent with who I was or where I really wanted to go, how I would shine. And so I just answered an ad, right? Like in like Indeed or something, and started renting from somebody. And I started my private practice on the side, just on a whim. It was not in my plan.
And did you have any kind of a business background? Had that been in your family? No,
I didn't have any business background. My family has owned businesses throughout the years, like maybe some extended family, not my immediate family, but I was familiar at some level with it. But no, I didn't get an MBA. I didn't, but I had always been a leader. It was funny because I was telling a friend the other day, we were chatting about my process, and I was like, yeah, but when I was in high school, I was class president, so this is something is in my blood that drives. I'm an ambitious person. And so I started renting from somebody, and it took me 1 year to build up my caseload. I left my full-time job after a year. And then in 2015, I started the first iteration of my group practice. I had 2 supervisees and a friend of mine, a colleague friend, and they all were like intrigued and they wanted to go into private practice. And I was like, well, I'll rent a space and we'll start a practice. And that's basically what we did. Yeah. It was called Caring Therapists of Broward then.
And from the beginning, were they working for you or contractors under you? Or did they? Were you more like a team of equals who were just managing the space?
It was a renter's model. So it was kind of like a co-op model where I rented the space. I managed some of the logistics. There were not a lot of logistics then. We had a 2-office suite. And then within about 5 months, we needed a third office. We had grown. And it was a renter's model for many years. And so I brought on other renters and other people started to get intrigued. We had a couple of systems in place. I had always had my office manager. Her name is Tracy Wallen. She is fantastic. She's always been with me from the beginning because she was contracting with my first practice that I joined. So I've always had support. That's one thing for anybody listening. A lot of people, when I do coaching, initially seem very hesitant to hire help. And I have had help from the beginning. I've had somebody answering my phones. I've had somebody doing billing. I've had somebody doing administrative work from the beginning.
Even when it was just you, even when you were all by yourself.
Even when it was just me.
Wow, that's great. Okay.
And I think, again, that was another preemptive strike because when I grew, I already had somebody who knew my business. I already, it was already all set in place. So when we grew, it was just natural to continue to do what we were doing on a much larger scale.
Yeah, let me put a pin in that for a second because Amanda's right. Our tendency is to think we can't afford to hire help or that we can't do that until we reach a certain point, etc. But most of us, we are clinicians. We are not necessarily administrators. That's not really our strength. And when you bring someone on board who can support the infrastructure of your business as it grows, you are positioned to grow so much better. I actually did not know that in the beginning. I wish I had. By the time I brought help on, there was a lot of cleanup to be done. So I love that, Amanda. That is a great point. Yeah.
And I think that's what happens for a lot of people. And I totally get it. It's the cleanup or when you hire help. Whatever administrative help that looks like, or even when you hire clinicians or bring on clinicians. Yeah. And so I've always had it to where I'm a person who needs support and I am very supportive of other people in my life. And I know that about myself. And so I have been able to structure my business that way in the sense that I have always been able to kind of see that today was not what it was always going to look like, that this might expand, something might shift, and to have some of the things in position.
Okay, so that's important. So from the beginning, you were thinking future oriented. You were always thinking about growth. So you were kind of putting your systems in place for today with the idea that we're not staying here. We're going somewhere here. And so this office manager that you had from the beginning has grown with you, right, along the way. And then
yes.
Yeah, so okay.
I laugh sometimes, like, I think, for the first 2 years, I paid her like, $100 a month or so, it was a very, minimal amount. It was, she was not doing much work, but it was, even the little work she was doing was helping me build my practice. Right. Yeah. And so that was so helpful. And now she's full-time with us and we have 2 other admin full-time staff. So it's just interesting to see where you go. But I think having all of that initially was very helpful. And then it wasn't, when I had to hire or expand people's hours, it didn't create so many shifts in what was already happening.
Yeah. Okay. It was just more of what you already had in place. So you started with this small group of a few people that were renting space from you. And then but you quickly began to expand. And so somewhere along the way, when did things begin to change and how did your model evolve? Because you've got two major sites now. Am I right about that? Two physical locations?
So
And
we have
then
four.
you
We
have
have four
four.
physical locations. One is
Okay.
a large site. It's in Davie. It's got 11 offices,
Okay.
and it's a beast. It's got four bathrooms, four air conditionings, four electric,
Mm.
bills. It's massive. And then we have two offices in Wellington, one with 5 offices and one with 4 offices. And then we have a satellite location in Fort Lauderdale. We rent from somebody there.
Wow. Okay. Four locations. So kind of a mothership and then three others that are beginning to expand from there. Okay. Got it. So, and then, so
Yes.
how has your business model evolved from that initial group of three to where you are today?
So basically, what happened was I realized that I needed to shift over my model. I wasn't exactly sure what that was going to look like because what was happening is we were starting to get a lot of referrals, basically.
Mm.
And we were not able to keep up with those referrals, but there really wasn't anywhere we didn't have any systems in place. Like we would get calls, we would bump it over to other people. And then what I found was Tracy, who was wonderful, was only able to answer phones like at certain times, which was okay. But essentially what that meant then was that we were not able to convert as many calls. So I
Okay.
realized we needed somebody full-time on the phones. We were getting a lot of calls there, and I needed people to be the therapist for the calls we were getting,
I
right?
got
So then
it.
I needed more therapists. And so when I went to go look at like, how do we do this in our current space? It wasn't going to happen. But in order to move space, for us to expand, the renters model was not going to allow for that to happen.
Okay.
So basically, I realized I needed to shift my model because I needed the income to be able to sustain a full-time admin person, a larger office, and all the things that come along with that. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question about this real quick. Um, the phones are interesting to me. What you're saying is that the referrals began to come, so you're getting a lot of calls, but you couldn't answer them live during the day. Was Tracy answering the phone live all day long, or whenever she was available?
She
Or
was answering them live for a period of time. Like I forget what hours she worked because it's been
yeah,
several
yeah,
years.
yeah.
But she would answer them from like 9 to 1 or 1 to 5, something like that. It was
And then
like
after that, it would be voicemail, right?
voicemails, and we
And
were
you,
losing business.
so what's interesting about that to me, so I told you I ran a group practice for 25 years, and we always lived off of a voicemail system. I never had somebody come in and answer the phones, and that was a big kind of a pain actually to figure out how to handle it. And we came up with our own way of doing it, eventually worked something out. But it's striking to me, I've talked about this, that one of the biggest things that sort of irritates me, actually, if I could say that, is how many referrals I get from people who say, I've called 10 people, you're the first one who's called me back. I've called 10 people, you're the first one who's called me back, even if it's been 2 weeks. Thank you so much for calling me back. Like that happens all the time. And I know that I don't want to get on too much of a soapbox because I can go there. But I know people don't return calls because they're drowning and they're swamped. But what you're saying is, I needed to be able to capture those calls because we needed the business, and that's where the income comes from, and that's how we help people. So you actually needed to step up your system and hire somebody to capture the business and help, rather than just
Yeah.
avoid the whole thing and stay smaller. That's really interesting. Okay.
And that's essentially where I came from. There was a literal answering machine,
Yeah.
and we would go in, we would
Yep.
listen to the calls, and then whoever got that call would return the calls. And that was a very common way
Yes.
that practices did. The problem with that is
Mm.
Google. Back in the day, you would get a referral from a friend, you would get a referral from your PCP, you'd have one referral, you would call them and you would wait for them to call you back.
Mm-hmm.
Google was popular then, but it was different. Now, Google gives you a list of 20 people in order
Right.
of the highest ratings.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like you have so much competition that you need to answer your phones right away. You need to capture that as quickly as possible.
Hmm.
Because if not, they're literally just going to go to the next person who has just as good ratings as you do, whose website is just as good as your website. They just go down the list.
Mm-hmm.
and they find somebody. So if you're not capturing those calls
Mm-hmm.
quickly, they are literally just going to move on to the next person. And then you're leaving a bunch of business on. The phones are
Yeah.
always tough for therapists because when you're a solo practitioner, for the most part, you don't have the funds to pay
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
a an
But what's
admin. I
interesting
totally
about
get
that,
that.
your personality is that, like you said, you're ambitious and you're a natural born leader. And so your approach to that problem was not to avoid the calls or skip the business. It was to expand to meet the need. You know, some people who are listening to this will be kind of going, oh, yeah, I don't want all that. That's fine. Well, that's fine. If that's not for you, that's fine. But if you do want to increase your income and your impact, this is a way to do it. It's stepping into the problem of too many referrals. I just recorded a thing just a few days ago about how to handle too many referrals. This is great. I love this. This is great, Amanda. All right. So you began to shift how you did things. So you hired people to answer the phones so you could capture the business so that you kept things in house. You didn't leave money on the table. And then your model had to shift. I know you shifted away from the renter's model to a more, a different type of structure. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So I spent a year actually in a mastermind group where I completely shifted a lot of things that I was doing during that time. And from there, I transitioned everybody over to contractors. And that was tough because I had people who had been with me, for 3 years, and they were used to the process and they were used to the way that things were going. And but it had to be an all or nothing because the goal was the business. It wasn't my personal goal and it wasn't the personal goals of the therapist. The goal was for the business. And if the business was going to sustain itself, then everybody had to shift what they were doing, including me. I mean, I completely shifted over the way that I was doing things as well. So we put everybody to contractors. And then almost immediately we went into a new building. We went into a 5-office suite, which is pretty big for a group practice.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like I had hit the jackpot then. I was like, we made it. Like it had 6 offices, and we had our own bathroom and we had a little kitchen area and it was like nice floors.
We're growing
and
up.
Control the air conditioning. I was like, I hit the jackpot, right? I was like, this is big time. Like, I really felt like
you had arrived.
Really, I was like, I arrived, right?
I remember that when I got into the nicest office I had, it was an old Victorian house, and I would go up and sweep the front porch on Monday mornings, and I felt so awesome about that, and would put geraniums out on the porch. Like, this is my little business. So when you made that switch, so you had people who were used to paying you a flat rate, a rent, and you switched it to a contractor, meaning that the business paid you and then you paid them in some way. Did you lose anybody in that? Because I think that would have been a hard transition to make. Did you lose any of your people?
We did not. And in fact, the therapist ended up making more money because what was happening is everything became streamlined. So we were able to control the flow of intakes. We were able to give them more intakes. We were able to market more and get more referrals. We were able to really look at what insurances were working, what insurances weren't working. We were able to convert private pay better. We were able to really shift everything that we were doing. So everybody ended up making more money as a result of it.
Wow. That's interesting and important and not something I'm used to hearing. That's a really important point because I know a lot of therapists who understandably are going to go, I'd much rather just pay a flat rate for rent every month and then I can go make whatever money I want. But what you found was they weren't that good at making money on their own. And when you streamlined everything and you centralized and you handled the marketing, you handled the systems, you handled the money, they did better. I love that. That's great. Okay.
And that's been a big part of our model for therapists is it's really designed for you to come in, see your client, write your note, take payment, and walk out. And that's it. I mean, that's really essentially all they have to do. People have other interests and other strengths, but we take care of the marketing. We take care of the scheduling. We take care of all the intricacies that go into all of that. And so it has allowed for us to hire the right kind of people who want to go out and do their own thing are not good fits for our group
Yeah.
practice. People who want a collaborative environment, who need support, who like to be in an office next to somebody else and don't want to market and don't want to necessarily deal with the financial things. They don't want to deal with contracting. They don't want to answer their phones. That's a great fit for them. And our full-time, I mean, I'll be honest, our full-time licensed clinicians make a good income for their work. They're not working 40 hours a week. So it's not it's like they're working, between 25 and 30 hours a week. We do have some people who work more because or they want to work more there. But, somebody could come in and work 28 hours a week, have a full practice, go to a meeting and really make a good income without having to do any of the other things that they don't want to do, which is funny because one of my offices is just completely full of introverts and I'm an extrovert. So it's funny because my husband, who is a psychologist and co-owner of the practice, just started working out of that office. And it's like, we were laughing because he's extroverted. He's like, here's this extrovert coming in with all of these introverts, but we attract a lot of introverts because they don't want to do the marketing piece. They don't want to knock on doors. They don't want to hand out business cards. We'll do that. We're happy to do that as extroverts and support people who want to be clinicians.
So I actually think I'm laughing at that because I think our type of work draws introverts. Like I've always said, there's a reason why most of us are quite happy being locked behind a door with one person all day long. So I get that. And I'm a little surprised. I mean, to me, the extroverts are the surprise. Like, oh, look at that. We have a different type in the mix. Awesome. Somebody needs to go out there and meet people. So I love that. And I get what you're saying about the kind of people who are attracted to working in this setting are people who I just want to see people. I just want to do my clinical work. And it's nice to have someone else handle the hassle factor and the business side of it. So one of the things I'm curious about is, how much autonomy do they have, your contractors? Do they set their own hours? Do they decide what kind of clients they want to see or not see? Do they decide if they want to do insurance or not? And the reason I'm asking this is because I spoke to someone a few years ago who worked at a group, and her particular background was in addictions. And that's what she had a real strong heart for, a real interest in. That's what she cared about. And she joined a group practice in her town that one of their rules was that no one was allowed to see someone who was just getting out of treatment. They had to have been out of treatment and stable for a period of time before they would let them come there as a client, which I had some real problems with. And I told her I don't think she was going to last long there because that went against everything she believed, which is get them in here the minute they're out of treatment. So ever since then, I've been curious about autonomy for contractors in a group practice. How do you handle things like that?
Great question. So it's twofold. They are contractors, so we follow the IRS guidelines. We don't dictate a lot of things for them because we cannot. And and I will say, we do have some employees because that aligns with what we need. Like we have postdocs, like psychology postdocs, they're employees because they have to be employees because of the amount of hours they have to work and the types of things they have to do and the supervision we provide. Some of our registered interns are also employees because we found it was just easier because they need a lot more support. And so within that support system, we made them employees. So, but most of our full-time licensed people are contractors. They want to remain contractors. And so we follow the guidelines. However, when we hire, we're very clear about who we are.
Yeah.
We work in the suburbs with teens, families, professionals, children. If you want to come and work 9 to 4, Monday through Friday, we're not a good fit for you because our clients come 12 to 8 or 11 to 7, right? Like, so if your goal is to be full-time at our practice and you want to work with children, chances are you're going to need to work till at least 6 o'clock, 4 days a week. And so we try to find like a values alignment and a goal alignment when we work with contractors. So they do set their own hours, but we also let them know when it's going to be the time that you're going to be most successful. Yeah. When do we have office space available, right? Because people do share offices because people are on varied schedules. People are allowed to set their own rates, but if in general, our group practice, let's just say, is generally $125 an hour for private pay. If you set your rate at $225, that's not going to be a fit for our clients because nobody pays 225 for it. I'm just putting out
Right.
numbers.
Right. Right.
So what we do is we recommend, like, this is generally, I think our like brand new licensed people are at 150, 175 is for fully licensed, like long-term licensed people. And then our registered interns are 125. So we let them know where most people are at. If you feel like you want to go at 125, 150, 175, 200, we're happy to do that. We just can't always guarantee that our referrals will line up with whatever the contractor's expectations are. But we are very honest about that. We don't bring people in and say, yes, you're going to get a private pay caseload of, 225, and you're going to have 20 patients a week, and you're going to make,
Right. So, you're walking the middle ground in a really good way, and that you're like, because you're right, as a 1099 contractor versus a W-2 employee, you can't really tell people what to do, but you can have expectations and guidelines, and you can have things that for you to work here, this is kind of how we want things to be. But what you're doing is you're telling them, and I'm actually surprised. I figured you would set the pricing centralized, but you do let them, they can flex on that the way they want to, but you can tell them, based on our experience, this is what works. You can try it some other way, but this is what we think will work. And then they work within the logistics that you've got available and that kind of stuff. That's interesting. Good.
Yep. And it's the same with the insurances. We let them know the insurances, the reimbursement rates, which ones we have the most calls from, what are some of the benefits and, pros and cons of each one. And we do allow them to decide what insurances to take. Our goal has really been as a group practice. And this is where this has been my role and the role of my admin team and my leadership team is requesting rate increases from the insurances so that it's a little closer in line with our private pay rate. When I was started in 2013, the reimbursement rates, they were actually okay. And then a lot of them got cut. And then they were closer to like $70, $60, $70 an hour. And nobody wanted to take insurance. And that's, again, where it's kind of like a preemptive strike for me. I think a lot of people were very surprised when I took insurance early on and that I wasn't a private pay practice, because there's very successful private pay practices in South Florida. But I always took insurance. That is a very much a values alignment for me, because I feel like healthcare should be accessible. Mental health care should be accessible. And it is my belief that the way to do that is to take health insurance.
Which to me is what an ideal practice is. It means you design your practice to suit you and what feels right to you. And I know lots of folks who feel that way. Like, this is just something I believe in. That's fine. But you still make it work for you.
And the way we've made it work is by having the admin support, because one of the people's biggest complaint about insurance is like having to sit on the phone a long time or getting rejected claims or even submitting claims. And all of that is streamlined in the back end.
When you're negotiating with an insurance company, just out of curiosity, do you negotiate as a group? Do you have a group practice ID, or are you negotiating on the individual behalf of the people who choose to be on that policy or not?
What a complicated question. It's like both, neither, yes, no. Every insurance is different. I scared my cat who's on my lap. He's like, why are you yelling? Because I got so energized about that, because it's such a complicated question. Is. Some insurances let us have a group contract. Some insurances, we have an MPI-2 number, and yes, we bill as the group, and the group gets paid, but everybody's credentialed individually. Some are credentialed as a group. It's just so complicated.
Yeah, it's crazy making. Yeah. But I was just thinking, with the size of a group that you have, you are in such a better position to negotiate rates, and especially the major insurance companies will negotiate with you. If you say, I've got 35 clinicians and 28 of them want to be on your panel, and if you don't raise your rates, you might lose us. I just think it gives you some collective bargaining power is what I think. That's probably not the right term to use, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
And what we found is not only are they looking for numbers, and the way that where we're going with our group practice is evidence-based strategies. They want to know that not only do you have a lot of people to service their clients, and are you using evidence-based practices that are really going to have good outcomes for our clients. We're actually working on getting all of our staff to have the basics, at the very least, in whatever their specialty is. We are known for cognitive behavioral therapy. We are training a lot of staff in DBT because that is very needed. And then EMDR is needed in South Florida as well. Majority of the EMDR therapists, all of our EMDR therapists are full.
Well, I was going to ask you actually what else people get by working with you, and other than just they get paid. And you're answering that. They get training. So you're providing, talk to me a little bit about that. Like, what makes it especially awesome to work at Caring Therapists of Broward? Like, what else do people get just by being a part of the community that you're building there for the providers? I'm not talking about clients, for the providers. So you're providing continuing education? You're providing clinical supervision?
So yes and no. Like with the continuing education, we have to be careful again because some people are contractors, but we'll do something like we'll look at the needs. Like we realized we were getting a lot of acute clients, a lot more suicidal ideality.
Right. Things were rough.
Don't say
People
that
were
three
suffering.
times. Yeah. Yes. And we're starting to see children very depressed at a much younger age, a lot of mood management issues, very young. And we realized we need our clinicians to be DBT informed.
Okay.
And so if they were employees, we paid for it, or sometimes we'll pay for half the training because it's in line with what we need.
Love it.
Or the clinicians will decide to pay for their own trainings. Some trainings we've been able to get for free. And then some trainings we have been able to like replicate easily. Yeah. So then that way people are able to have access to those trainings. So people do have access to those trainings. I keep saying it, and it's like, stands out so much, but like our admin team, our leadership team is so great. Like my sister Liz works for us. She is our director of operations. Like she is fantastic. She shines in this role. It's so good for her. So in tune sometimes like with what people need. And so we had like a couple of, I was going to say tragedies, but a couple of sad things happened. And like, she's like, we need to send flowers to people right away. Like, or like, we're celebrating people's birthdays. We're celebrating. We threw two people a baby shower, like that camaraderie and like that connection, I think is really what stands out for people. Like it's small, but it's so meaningful because when you're a solo practitioner, you're by yourself, you're in your office and you don't see anybody. Just knowing that if you have a question, there's somebody next door, there's a clinical director available.
Yes. Yeah. So their support staff is almost like having a treatment team down the hall, and which you're right, you don't have when you're in a solo practice. But what I also hear you saying is that one of the things that I think can happen in what I think of as a mega practice, like a really big group practice, is that we can lose what makes us who we are anyway. You can lose that sense of humanity, that we're healers. We thrive on that. But you are really careful to make sure you don't lose that. So you're celebrating the good stuff, you're honoring the sad stuff, you're paying attention to the people in your practice as the human beings that they are, and you're growing them as clinicians. You're growing them in various ways or offering them the opportunity to grow, which I think is probably above and beyond, I think. I don't know how often that happens. I haven't heard about it. But I think that's really great.
Thank you. Yeah. That's really what I wanted. I always like tell people, I'm like, we're an insurance-based practice, but it still feels like a boutique style practice in the sense like our offices are designed very nicely, like they smell good and we decorate for the holidays and we have a holiday party and, and I think we're like a mom and pop, but not, right? So it's like, we're really stuck in this like in-between phase where it's like, we are small compared to other businesses, right? If you think about Amazon or you think about these large companies like Google, like nowhere near like that. But at the same time, we're not a small group practice. I mean, we are a large group practice. I don't know, but we're one of the largest group practices, certainly in South Florida, and one of the most recognized. Yes. Yeah. And so that's very meaningful. And I think there's some pride too for me and for the clinicians to say they're a part of this practice and that we're very well known, we're respected. We have good reviews. People feel like they can send their, we get referrals from other practices. People can send it and that they're going to get good care. Well, not everybody's going to be a good fit, but they're going to get good care.
Well, one of the things I was just thinking about that where you are so well positioned, I'm in a very small town in East Tennessee, and and I don't run my practice anymore, but for a very long time, we were the go-to resource in town, and we were really picky about who we invited to come and join us, and so we developed a reputation over time that no matter who you saw at our office, it was going to be good. Like you're right, it doesn't necessarily mean it's always a perfect fit between individuals, but in general, it happened all the time that I would get calls from people saying, my doctor told me it didn't matter who I saw as long as it was somebody at Cove Mountain, which was the name of my practice. And I was so proud of that because it meant we had quality, that no matter what you needed, somebody was going to be able to help, and they were good. Right. And that's what I'm hearing with you too, that you have a process for how you bring people on board. And then if they need a little help shoring up their skills, you work on that. So you will be the go-to. It sounds like you already are in South Florida, and people can't go wrong. If you go there, they're going to take care of you and it's going to be good. They're professionals. They know what they're doing over there. Right.
And that's exactly what we wanted. And even from our first touch point on the phone, right? Like Lisa and Liz are two people on the phone. They're great. They're kind, but they are also firm with people because people don't maybe understand their insurance benefits for mental health and things. So it's like we're able to really meet people right from the beginning and put our best foot forward, really get them linked up to the appropriate therapist, be seen, and have high quality care. Yeah. And that to me, that is really important. That's always been important because I built my practice with my clients, right? Yeah. Like I've had clients that were with me during this journey and they sometimes can't even believe like where the practice is at, right? But I owe it to them too, and like the care that I gave them. And I was always, I'm a giver too, like, that comes with pluses and minuses. But the plus of that was that I was really able to give to my clients then in a way that was very meaningful for them. And then referrals came from them, right? And that they continued to see me, and it really built up my clinical skills because I was able to work with people over long periods of time where I really got to understand mental health. I really got to understand what helps people. And so I owe a debt of gratitude to my old clients. And I know that I built my practice on following up on their texts or following up on their calls or following up on their emails, making sure they had appointments, making sure if somebody fell off my schedule, I gave them a call back, making sure I was transparent about my fees, making sure I was very consistent, that my schedule stayed the same, that I took off the time that I needed for work, but I didn't just cancel them on a whim. Like that I was really
professional,
consistent. And that's what's important to me, is to be consistently present and consistently caring and consistently available in a way with boundaries.
Appropriate way.
In a professional way. And that's what we want from our clinicians too.
Yeah, that's so good, Amanda. And you just made it. I feel like I need to go back and get a transcript of this because you just rattled off a whole long list of things that I think it's easy for us to take for granted that people don't actually always do and should. Following up on people who disappear, being there in a consistent way, being transparent. I love what you said about being transparent about your fees, so everyone understands kind of what the arrangement is and how things work. All of that was really good, and I think people don't always do those things. And I always say, if you really want to be successful in private practice, the first thing you got to do is be a really good therapist. Be a really good clinician, be a really good healer, whatever your area, your industry is. Be good at what you do first, and then go from there. So you do that, and you ran a professional show from the very beginning, because so now that culture is something that's come from you and has spread to your staff, right? Y'all stand for something. Yeah, you're picky.
And then when we put our leadership team in place, like they have the same vision. They get what we're doing. They get the why. They get all of this. Like they really are involved in this. And then we have fun too. Like, we were laughing about an old insurance panel we were on that paid us, like, I'm just like embarrassed to even say how much they paid us. And we were laughing about that. That stuff is important, to feel a part of a team and to feel a part of something bigger than yourself. And I think that really has been like what made our group practice stand out, like from the clinician.
Yeah. So tell me about the leadership team. What is a leadership team? What does that mean in your group?
So we have a clinical director who manages all things that are related to the clinician. So she actually does hiring. She will do firing too. She does onboarding, and then she runs our staff meetings and will be like the go-to person for any clinical issues within the practice. Okay. And then we have 2 site supervisors. So these are people who are physical in locations, and they provide clinical supervision. and they are really the go-to people within the office. So office space, office issues, needs of the office. They're like the pulse of the office, right? Because I'm not in the offices.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, there's not even space for me. Even if I was like, I want to go back and see a full caseload, like there's no space for
There's
me.
nowhere.
So there's nowhere for me to go. And so that's not my plan. And that's not the best usage of my time, but I need eyes and ears there in a good way. Like I need somebody to say, you know what, morale's kind of down here. Let's they like in the Davie office, they love Chick-fil-A. They're like, let's get Chick-fil-A or what, whatever. So these are like the people who are in tune with the pulse and who will do some clinical work and a little bit of administrative work. These are clinicians.
I totally get it. Somebody has to go make sure there's toilet paper, right? Like somebody has to watch things. Yeah, got it.
And then, so that's the clinical part. And then we have the like typical administrative part. We have Liz, who is the director of operations. So she's like Fatima's, who our clinical director is her counterpart, but she does it for all of the business things. She does payroll. She does a lot of the marketing and social media. She does billing sheets and reviewing that. She will do anything kind of like operationally that we and then she also helps answer our phones as well. So she is like an intake person as well.
Okay.
And then we have Lisa, who is our administrative assistant. She is primarily answering the phones and doing like tasks. She's at our largest office, so she is in person. Liz is virtual. And then we have Tracy Wallen, who manages the billing and credentialing and is the office manager. So she's making sure that licenses aren't expired. She's making sure that all of the back end for all of the insurances are done. She inputs all of the payments into our electronic health record or reconciles all of those things. Yeah. So she does like all the behind the scenes billing, which is quite a bit. I mean, we do about 2,000, a little bit more than 2,000 sessions a month.
Wow.
So I know, it's wild. Yeah. It's just wild. Like when you see it, it's just wild.
Yeah.
It's like, so, like even for me as the owner who reviews my numbers all the time, when I look at that, I'm just like, man. Woo. And to be honest, I mean, we are looking to expand and we're looking to grow because the need is there and we have all the systems in place. And so the need is there. I'm a cautious grower. Like I'm a cautious expander. So we try to really do it in a way that is very meaningful, but
timing is important. There's always a tension between when do you grow, when does the need catch up, when does the need get ahead, and then you grow to meet the need. Like there's always a little bit of a tension around that. So I'm curious about for you personally, you mentioned that your husband's a co-owner. I was going to ask you if you had any business partners. If you were, the other day when we talked, I told you, I called you the CEO and you were like, oh yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way. But do you have business partners? Are you the one that's kind of carrying the weight of all the decisions here? You are.
Yeah. So my husband and I are co-owners. I am like the heavy. That's like my, like I'm the one really doing a lot of the reviewing of reports and really the back end, like visionary kinds of things and looking at where our vision is going and all the pieces for that. My husband is a psychologist. He was actually working full time at our local jail as their staff psychologist. And as business has shifted, we realized like he would be way better served in our practice. Like there is a need. So he actually just came on as a full-time employee of our practice. And we make all decisions together. I mean, like yesterday, I went to look at office space. I called him immediately.
So I love that you have help here, but ultimately the veto power is yours, and you're the one. You're the one who has all the opportunity and the freedom to decide where you want this business to go, which is lovely. You also are the one that has all the responsibility and who carries the weight of making all the decisions, which is harder than people realize, I think. So I'm curious, like, how do you feel about what's happening for you personally? I'm curious about your evolution as a person, because you've gone from being one person who helps people one-on-one or whatever, however you were working your clinical work, to managing a team, running a company that is providing a massive service. And I went and on your website, you have a really cool video on your homepage I was watching earlier today that talks about all the different ways people can get help at your business. And I'm like, good Lord, they do a little bit of everything, which I think is awesome. I think that's just great, but that's a lot for you. So I'm curious about What are you learning about yourself along the way? Do you miss the clinical stuff, or do you feel like this is just the same idea, just on a grander scale? Like, what's happening for you personally in terms of your own growth?
So I have a standing therapy appointment every Tuesday at 1 o'clock.
Good.
So that
That's
is
great.
very helpful.
Good for
It's
you. That's
like
great.
it was funny because there's all these like things on social media. It's like, I want to know who the therapist is of the therapist.
Yeah.
Like who, who's like the grand therapist. So
Yeah.
like, I have a grand therapist. She's great. And that has been really, been really helpful. It's definitely been an evolution because I'm a clinician. Had I have not had a pregnancy and a maternity leave, and to go from seeing a full load to seeing none would have been very hard. Like I think that
Kind of
would have
weaned
been
you. Kind of weaned you from this.
I was weaned from it. And so it
Yeah.
wasn't like, so I miss the clinical work, but being an owner means that I have to be available at all times. Things happen all the time. We had just something, it wasn't an emergency, but it was like something I needed to answer right then and there. Like, it just was like, what do we do in this situation? There's a lot of those. It's like, I don't work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday by any means, but I'm doing all kinds of interesting, weird things all throughout the days. And my hours are spread, or questions come up, or I have meetings, or I have, things that I have to do. And so I think I miss the clinical work because I like it, but my life looks so different than it did even 2 years ago from the point, I'll just use the point of the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, I was driving down to Broward an hour, 3 days a week, and I was working 1 day a week up in Wellington. I didn't have a child. I wasn't pregnant. And the group practice we had 2 locations, and we had maybe, 15 therapists. And then to move forward 2.5 years, the practice is booming. It looks so different. My husband has a new job. We have a baby. My life is so different. So my adjustment has been to the adjustment of all of the changes that are going on, not just the changes with the business.
That's
like there's
lot.
been so, and like, there's a lot of things like personal, like my father passed away, and that was really tough. And that was right before the pandemic. And I had like some health stuff that has impacted me. I'm healthy, but I have like a health condition that impacts my life. And that has been a part of like my 3-year journey. It's so interesting that you asked that question, because that has been like my own work with my therapist, my own work with myself is like, where am I going and what am I doing?
Yes.
Because my life looks so different than even it has 3 years ago.
Yeah. So, well, because I'm super interested in that, because I think running a business impacts us on so many different levels. And I always say, how you do anything is how you do everything. And there's nothing like running a business to show you your stuff, whatever your stuff is, whatever your issues are. And as our business grows, we have to grow with it. We have to. Like, we are challenged to evolve and to handle things that we didn't know we could handle before, or to learn how to set better boundaries, or own our worth, or get clear about what we actually want to do that we didn't realize we wanted to do. There's just so many ways that I think we're constantly being called to change and grow, specifically because we are entrepreneurs and because we are stepping into creating a life that really is what we want it to be, which is a constantly moving target, right? And what you have done, Amanda, like the way you talk about it is like, yeah, we just do this and we do this and we do this. And you're just like, but it's like crazy. It's awesome. It's impressive. It's not what everybody wants, but it is what's working for you, and consequently what's working for your staff and what's working. I mean, you really, I always say this, that we change family trees. We uplift entire communities, and that is what you're doing. I also say that you need to run a practice that is profit-centered, people forward, and you're doing that too. So I love that. And I just want to just thank you for coming on, just sort of sharing with us all the stuff that it goes into growing a practice like this and where you are with it today. So if you were doing it over again, is there anything you would do different? Or is there anything that when you look back on it, that either you yourself would have handled different, or when you're coaching people today, are there certain like mistakes that you see people make when they're trying to develop their own group practice?
It's so interesting because I'm like the kind of person I try not to live my life with regrets, even if
Yeah.
they're like, like,
Yeah.
so it's like, I wouldn't do anything different because everything gets you to the point where you're at today. And I'm like, oh, I'm happy where I'm at today. So like,
Yeah.
I don't regret any of that. Like I said, I'm a cautious person in a lot of ways and and I think that I would just do it. I don't want to use the word faster, but like, I would just do it without the thought. Like, I think a lot of the times my own anxiety gets in the way, and I'm like, can we afford it? Can we do it? Are people going to leave, or is this going to, all that
Right.
self-doubt comes up,
Right.
right? And so that can sometimes slows the process. And it's like, no, we have a good model. We have, it's just to
Trust
work
it.
through all of the self-doubt. And so that's like the emotional work that we all have to do. A lot of people have self-doubt. When I work with people, they get nervous about, are they going to be able to fill clinicians? Are they going to be able to fill, pay themselves?
If you weren't a little bit nervous about it, it would tell me you don't have any common sense. I mean, that just means you're growing,
You probably should be a little anxious about like signing a new leaf. Like,
right. But not
that
frozen.
Makes sense. Yes, not frozen. Anxious, but not frozen, nervous, but not frozen.
Right.
And so, it's kind of like what I said. I think that the people that I coach are ready for it. They need support. And that's why coaching can be so helpful. And coaching was helpful for me. And I still get coaching. Like I tell people, like, I'm a private practice consultant and I get my own coaching, just like I get my own therapy. Yes. I just will get it from the grand coach, the coaches of the coaches. And what I learned from him is like how to get to the next level. So if you're at one level, look to the people one level above you.
Yes.
If you're looking for coaching and consulting.
Yes.
You don't want to go too high. I would never have been able to work with Ken in the beginning because the gap would have been so wide. And so that's why when you would ask what kind of consulting, I actually don't really work with solo practitioners that much anymore because I found I was giving them way too much and it's like a little overwhelming. It's not, they're not ready for it, which is okay. There are other people who are fantastic to work for solo practices to get them ready than to maybe work with me where I'm like, let's like really get down to business and let's put some of these systems in place.
So a couple of things I want to put a pin in here is that number one, you are very successful running a massive practice, and we haven't even touched on it, but a Facebook group with 18,000 plus clinicians. And you are still getting your own therapy and you are working with a coach yourself. And I'm going to guess have for a while. I've worked with coaches off and on for 20 years and lots of different ones. And they've all been exactly what I needed at the time. And I don't ever want to be without a coach. I may take a little bit of a break in between people sometime, but not for long. You're always growing, right? And we need guidance too. So I love that you're doing that. And I also love that you're passing it on. So tell us about the coaching that you're providing, because there will be some who listen to this interview and kind of going, "Oh my Lord, kill me now. I don't ever want this."
I know. Yeah, I talk to people. They're like, "No."
Yeah, no.
If I go to local networking events, they're like, "You are like on another planet." I'm like,
right.
Like you don't. Please don't feel like this is the only way. Like I know some people who have like fantastic solo practices that are just killing
doing just fine.
And, like, that is great. Like you are so good where you're at. Like that is so. I will never tell everybody. Like you do not have to be where I'm at. This just happens to be where we're at.
But there will be some
totally okay. There will be
some who will be like, "Ooh, I want some of this. This sounds really exciting." And I'm thinking if I was going to give someone advice, it would be to hire a coach sooner. Don't stumble through it and figure it out on your own. When I started my practice in the early 90s, there was no such thing as coaching. Nobody talked about this. There was nothing. I went to the library, checked out some books, and started making mistakes. That's how I did it. So you offer a group mastermind kind of training coaching program, and then you also offer some kind of one-off consultations for folks who are at a certain level and know exactly what they need. I love that.
Yes.
So I'll make sure I get from you the links to that so I can be sure I can put that in the show notes below. And I'm going to encourage people to reach out to you for that and take a look at that, because you can save yourself such a headache and so much time, and you can lose a lot of money if you're not careful. It is worth it to hire the help. And I took a course on podcasting before I started this little adventure, and it's amazing how helpful that was. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know to think about that. That's very helpful, so we all need that. The other thing that you said that I want to highlight was you need to hang out with people who are a little ahead of where you are. not too far ahead, but a little ahead. And I had a coach who used to say, you want to stretch but not splatter, like when you're
That's
in terms
great.
of, right, think in terms of the goals that you want to reach. But when you're in the room with people who are doing things that you're like, how do they do that? I want to be like that, you will grow. You will just naturally, it'll happen. You will stretch just from hanging around with those people. So I love that. We will definitely do that. So people can join my private practice collective, which is your Facebook group, right? Is there anywhere else you would want them to go if people want to connect with you, or is that the best place?
We have a website for the Facebook group, basically, and all of the consulting. And my email is there. It's Amanda@myprivatepracticecollective.com. Always easier, probably just find it in the show notes because it's so long. That's like, if anybody wants to know, like, my number one mistake in life, yes, it's before, and I didn't think about it, but it just came to me. It's like making my URLs, my emails, like way too long. Like, Caring Therapist of Broward is like,
yes,
and there's no good acronym to shorten it that's available. It's just like, and the same thing, My Private Practice Collective, it's way too long. Do not make your website long. Make it just like initials or something. That was
I can relate.
Yes. When we all do it, it's like this. We have to include our credentials and we have to include our whole name and our location.
No, you do not.
Make it like Geico.com is the best URL.
Right.
Make it the best, so simple.
Make it easy to remember.
How can I make Caring Therapists into 5 letters?
That's really funny. It's like naming a baby. Like you name something and then you're stuck with it forever. Like, oh, I shouldn't have never done that. They'll never be able to spell that. Yeah, that's so true. So this has been awesome, Amanda. I've really, really enjoyed it, and I appreciate your willingness to just kind of dive in and share some of the details. It's been fun. The energy is really good, and I'm going to enjoy watching from afar what you are doing. I don't run a group anymore. I constantly fantasize about starting another one, and then I'm like, no. So I get that. So is there anything else that you would like to share that you think would make this experience, this interview, this episode complete?
So I'll throw a little monkey wrench in here. So I'm also a yoga teacher. During my maternity leave and in the year that I was home with the baby, I did my yoga teacher training. And what I love about yoga and what has always drawn me to yoga is that when I go to yoga, I don't compare myself to anybody. I'm a perfectionist, type A at heart. And so I'm always like, I'm not a big comparison of other people per se, but maybe just where I'm at. But when I'm at yoga, the person to the left of me is doing some kind of headstand that I will never be able to do. And the person to the right of me, is a brand new beginner. And what I love about yoga is I'm just monitoring where I'm at.
Yes.
And being present with that and not pushing myself and I don't want to say pushing myself, but not being hard on myself and not having all those perfectionistic tendencies. So for those of you who are listening, be present with where you're at. You can push yourself, but don't compare yourself to me or don't compare yourself to the person to the right of you, because everybody has a different story. Everybody has a different process. And just knowing that you can kind of bring that same yogic energy to you, the calm energy, and that you want to push yourself, but you don't want to overexert yourself. And you want to be present to the moment, and you want to be present to what is happening in your own practice and to have progress, but not perfection.
I love that. The way I say that is hike your own hike. We all have our own pace. We all have our own rhythm. We all have our own dreams. And it really doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. It matters that you are true to yourself and that you are moving forward at a pace that feels right for you. I love that. I do think challenge yourself to grow a little bit, but what growth looks like for one person will be very different from what it looks like for someone else. So that's beautiful. Thank you. I love that. I didn't know you were a yoga teacher. How about that?
Yes, I am a yoga teacher. Yes,
great.
That was a passion project of mine. Thank you so much for having me. It was so great. I love our energy together too.
It's been really great. Thank you so much, Amanda. And for all of you who are listening, I hope you'll dive into this a little bit further. Be sure and check out all the links I'll have below and connect with Amanda if you are interested in growing a group, because good Lord, you're going to learn from one of the best. So this is great. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and I will see you next time. Bye now.